Welcome back to my little bit where I introduce you to the next section. This is the last time you're going to see me tonight. I'm just here to say a massive thanks to everyone who's participated in the programme this weekend and to hand you over to the rest of the evening's events. So I'm going to encourage you to feedback about what you've seen, what you've heard, what you thought about the Joyous Thing #2. Watch out for the link, which will be on the streaming page and also in the chat box as well. So do offer feedback, and you can also use the hashtag Joyous Thing. So that's about everything from me and from what you've seen. And I'm going to hand over now to Mano and Sailor the Sun, who are from Rising Bristol, which is an organisation for 16 to 25-year-olds in Bristol, supporting them with their creative practice. And they're going to give you a response to what they've seen yesterday and today. And then after that, at 8 o'clock, we're going to hand over for the third Members Commission, which is an evening with Tourfest, where there'll be a load of live music. There's Jake Blanchard, Big Blood, and Nick Faramon DJing, and that's going to be 8 till late. If you fancy a bit of a dance around your kitchen, I'm sure there'll be the opportunity. So just to say a massive thanks for having me to Outlands, and thanks to everyone who's participated. So I'm going to hand over to Mano and Sailor the Sun now. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Where do we start?
Facts. There has been a lot of creativity expressed. First of all, I reckon it would be amazing to just appreciate Outlands and the team, because I can only imagine how much admin and paperwork, and I don't even want to think about it.
It sounds
stressful to bring all of this together. Yeah, it's just been crazy.
It has been wild. And I think there's been I love the website, and I guess just the format and everything that really got me, from Emma's like intro with the crazy background and Whoopi Goldberg on the little presentation cards that she had, or whatever it was, man, and the candles. It was just crazy. I love like the attention to detail, regardless of the fact that it's online. I think you could have very easily just like sat in a room, not really decorated it, and done some stuff. But there's definitely been like an effort put in to make this feel like something, and I think that's cool. It's different to other online events I've been to in that sense, for sure.
And I reckon also in terms of like the content that has been showcased, or in a sense, personally, my experience of this event has been it's felt more like an exhibition. Like the feelings I get when I walk into an exhibition, because usually when I walk into an exhibition, I try not to expect any specific things. I try to keep my mind as open as possible and just step into it and try and experience the art as I see it. And it's been really cool to have that experience again, because I haven't necessarily had that in months, for sure. Right.
Yeah. Should we move into some of the acts that we have to catch?
I felt like it could be cool to talk about our personal favorites in terms of like the pieces that really spoke to us over this weekend.
Yes, definitely. But also, I've just had a thought, maybe caveat our entire response with the fact that in many ways we're new to the experimental genre as a whole.
For sure.
So this was definitely like an experience, like I want to say outside of my comfort zone. So I was testing the waters, experiencing things that I haven't before, and formats. And I guess that's the point, right? It's experimental music. It's supposed to be pushing the boundaries and the structures. So yeah, big shout out for Rising getting us connected to this space. Yeah.
I appreciate you mentioning that, actually, because I'm pretty much the same. Like I was mentioning to Emma earlier, it was like, I was like, whoa, like a lot of this artwork, I've never experienced anything like this. And it was really just me trying to, like I mentioned earlier, process it as it comes. And I was like, whoa, Am I even in the right mind space to process it? But it was cool nonetheless. I would start off in terms of talking of some of the specific pieces that actually really spoke to me. The first one was the drum piece from last night. I don't know if it's
Pretty Grim, right? Was it the opening, or are you talking about?
I'm talking about further on last night.
Oh,
I can't remember the name, and I'm so sorry because I should know the name of my favorite one. But it, like, I don't know if it might have been that I am biased because as a previous drummer myself, I was completely blown away by just a lot of the stuff that was being done. And also, I also happen to work as a freelance videographer as well. So I was seeing a lot of visual things being done there. I was like, whoa, I wonder how this is being done. Yeah, and also there was this combination between drumming and vocals, but vocals in a way that it wasn't, I feel like, or at least how I digested it, it didn't feel like the vocals were meant to be audible in a sense. It was more like feeling what he's saying rather than hearing it. Because even recently, I've actually been chatting with a friend where they were talking about that very point, about sometimes it's not about hearing what is being said, it's about feeling what the person or the artist is emotionally conveying through the words or sounds.
Right. And I think that's a space that experimental music touches on in like a very different way, whereas I think there's like a rawness to it where the experience isn't guided. And I did find that difficult, like in the sense of like not having those traditional structures to depend upon, but it did push like the way that I was thinking. I'm not sure if I saw the specific drum piece that you're talking about, but when I was watching Pretty Grim, and I was like waiting for this drop, because that's what happens, right? That's the thing, that's the structure. It drops. And then it just didn't. And I had this moment where I was like, wow, like that's really dope. Because it's just different. And I think it's like you can hype people up for 5 minutes and give them nothing. And like that's just how you roll in that piece of music. And I thought that was really cool, man. Because I guess it's like challenging that corporate approach to songwriting and performance. And the visuals as well. Like I was loving the costume. Like it was wild. Like and even the way that their performance was recorded, it was so engaging. I felt like really matched the vibe. That it took me out of my room. Like I was in the office, but I wasn't in the office. Do you know what I mean? Like I was in the club. Like it was crazy. I think that's some real talent to convey that through a screen as well. I guess that's also something to consider, right? We're not experiencing these things in a physical space, and obviously that impacts the reception.
Yeah.
So we're not only talking about like our first experience of experimental music, we're also talking about our first experience of experimental music online. So it's different, and mad props to everyone for like converting their usual.
I reckon and another thing that I really loved about it was I was just thinking then in terms of like looking at the Joyous Thing color scheme and like the background colors. I was like, in a sense, it almost is like a metaphor for everything that's gone on this weekend. It feels like just a burst of color and a burst of mental processes into like a whole weekend that has been really cool to explore. One thing that's been really great has been a lot of the conversations that have been had over the weekend. It's been really cool to have all these different perspectives being shared on the topics that have been shared, like earlier today. with talking about some of these companies and organizations experience of carrying on doing the great stuff they're doing in their cities while lockdown is still happening. It was quite eye-opening, because although I am also someone who is involved in work similar to some of them are, especially with people and maybe getting people more involved in art or whatnot. It was really cool to see them express those things really honestly, and find parallels in areas that I relate with the struggle of trying to carry on creating in a specific way during such a crazy time. Yeah, and yesterday, again, I can't remember the individual's name, but the conversations around dubstep, dub.
Oh yeah, that was Danvir and Aniruda. I have no idea if I'm saying that right. I'm really apologetic if I've got that wrong.
I think
AKA so. Dr. Das. So, but
It
yeah,
was
that conversation was sick. I was really, really inspired by that conversation as well. I think like there was just one of the big takeaways for me was like a minimalistic approach to making music, right? And I love minimalism anyway, but I'd never thought about it in that sense. And I was talking about like stripping down 40 stems to those 6 things that actually move in the track. And that's something that we've talked about already, right? So I think especially in your music, Manu, so it's interesting how it goes across genres.
Yeah, it's really crazy. And even for me, listening to him talk about it, it was quite eye-opening to see a different perspective on minimalistic music, because with the music I make, I take a slightly different approach with the way I minimize or strip down the pieces of work. But it's also kind of a reminder to me that like, because your version of minimalistic is this way doesn't mean that has to always be your version of minimalistic, if that makes sense. And it kind of had me thinking maybe I could start pushing these even further, because I started pushing it on a project I'm hoping to drop later on this year. But I'm like, interesting, it could be cool to completely flip this whole thing on its head and just keep throwing things at wall and see what sticks really. But also trying to create a space where we're not putting too much into it.
It's important.
And the content as opposed to effort. Yeah.
Cool. I think if I can move on to Kathy, I really enjoyed the walking sound piece today.
Oh, yes.
Geez, deep listening. My mind was feeling like fresh after that. Like, stillness, man.
It's different, and it reminded me so much of the time period that I spent kind of researching binaural sound and like just listening to binaural recordings of different cities. Essentially, binaural recordings are where they record with mics that are shaped like ears, so the sound is picked up exactly the way we listen to things. And people just make these random recordings of different cities, and I just would sit there and have earplugs in and just like close my eyes and try and imagine that I'm in that city. But it was really cool to like see that in a city that I'm fairly familiar with. And listening to what it sounds like underwater is really cool. Yeah, especially not being underwater.
Yeah. Honestly, like, it was wild. I think so therapeutic, that kind of I don't want to say the word content, but like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I also liked to some degree the little bits of interactions she had with like bypassers and stuff.
Yeah.
It was really cool to see people were also really interested, like, what are you doing and what are you listening for? Yeah. Super cool.
We all miss that human interaction, eh?
Oh, facts. Shout out Boris.
But one thing I wanted to talk about was Klein Stadium. Like, geez, man, I found that was for me. That was like, okay, now I really don't know what's going on. But it was cool because I mean we're pushing into the 360 video space. Yeah. I felt like even the way that the script was, how this character is cutting between hosting and like his political rants and like just the dynamic between the host and the presenter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was difficult. I'm not gonna lie. Like it was difficult to I think that's the thing about follow the piece. When you have those borders and boundaries pushed and you go into those murky waters of experimentation, it's kind of hard to follow the leader, if you know what I mean. And I know that, like me being honest, that was one of the harder pieces for me to connect with over the weekend. But it was cool that it had this grounding in the sense that like I could navigate the space how I wanted to, even though I didn't know how all the time. But like,
the option was great, and also to be fair, I have to give it to you. The use of 360 is a bold use because even as a videographer myself, like I am so intimidated by 360 work just because of how tough it is to work with. So to do a whole piece based on it is like fair play. Like I could 100% applaud that. And and it's new technology in terms of like it's a technology that not very many people have adopted into the pieces, and that got me thinking because there's certain ideas I've had with 3D that I haven't actually worked on. So it's in some senses it's probably affected me in ways that weren't intended. But yeah, it's got me thinking a lot more in terms of technology and how we can harness like the advantages of them to create our visions and maybe even help the viewers create alternate visions for it, because I guess that's one part of 360 is that it's really tough because a lot of times, because they get to look anywhere, the audience doesn't know where you want them to look.
Right. And it's like you want that anchor throughout the experience, but also you have to respect experimental performance pieces because it's like they're taking risks.
Yeah.
Are ultimately pushing genres forward. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And someone had a question yesterday about like, what if the fragmentation of music into different genres is important for the process later on when
100%.
Do you know what I mean? So it's
I agree with that 100%. Yeah. I think it's so vital because even though I'm so like a lot of times not fully sure how to digest the content, I'm also very aware of how important it is that every single one of you guys are doing what you're doing, because like art doesn't grow without experimentation, without pushing those borders. And to think of all the different genres that exist, a lot of those genres were birthed out of all other genres and artists pushing the bill and trying to expand the horizon to the point that it just became its own thing. And so as much as I say I wasn't able to fully digest something, I'm fully respecting and excited that you're doing what you're doing, because it's like in an organism, everyone is playing a part, and it's awesome to see what the other parts of this huge thing that's art.
And that really brings me into conversations that we're having today in the whole tea and cake side of the day. No, okay, I'm not gonna get distracted.
Yeah.
Cool. The whole tea and cake side of the day when. No, I'm distracted. What was I even trying to say just now?
I think you're probably trying to talk about like the conversation and how.
Yes.
How it,
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. The ADD is getting to me. So yeah, when we were having those conversations, that's what made me realize what you were saying and how true it is, in the sense that we are all just different parts of this big organism that is like music and creativity. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, 100%.
yeah.
And it's really cool to see. And I think that's another factor of the whole weekend that's been really, really fun to explore, is how, again, similar to what I said about the exhibition thing, is how every piece that is sat in this this festival, in a sense, has forced me into a different way of looking at things, or a different way of perceiving it. Because, for instance, the conversations that happened over the tea thing were very different from the conversations that happened with regards to dub, from the conversation that happened with regards to the COVID's effect in a lot of those areas. So it was really nice to almost be put in a position where I was being challenged to change my perceptions, or how I was perceiving certain things. And it was great, honestly. I think it was really cool.
I think that's cool.
I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting any pieces that I wanted to talk about.
Any of the highlights. Now, yeah, I think one thing maybe for next time I would love to see is like, I guess you can't do it all the time, but something like the client piece, right? After that, I just wanted to talk to people. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to have space to digest. Okay, like, what the heck just happened to me? Like, to my senses. Because I think digesting those experiences is what helps push it forward.
Yes.
And, like, take root and not just be like a one-day thing. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's why it's helpful to experience this festival with you, Manu. Is like, now we're conversing and having ideas, and
and I guess that's also the like limitations and the frustration of COVID being a thing, is that we get to have our first experience of experimental music, experimental art, in a setting that is probably not the setting specifically that it was created in terms of like you mentioned, not being able to have those conversations. Because a lot of times after viewings, or in festivals, or in shows or exhibitions, whenever you look at something, sometimes the best way to also be able to digest that is to have a conversation with someone. It's like, oh, what are your opinions on this? And some people can help guide you on ways to understand it. But I guess that's, again, something that's really tough when it comes to
online.
The online, for sure. And that is in no way faulting any of the organization of this, because this has been amazing. 100%. And personally, next time I reckon I would quite like to have, I guess that's also harder, but to do with time to maybe have an opportunity to hear from the artist and why they created the piece. But then again, some artists don't want to give that information out. They want the viewers to make up their own understanding of the piece. But personally, how I take in art, it would be cool to understand the behind the scenes of some of those art pieces, and it would be really curious to see how those came together, and all the
100%.
hands that brought them together.
100%. Yeah, that would be so cool, man. I don't know how much time we have left, so I just want to.
Yeah, I think we're literally just at the time that we were meant to be.
At the finish line. I'm just going to quickly say, and I'm sure, Manu, you echo this sentiment, but thank you to Outlands and letting us be at the Joyous Thing too. and also being so open and bold as to let two random young guys
give it opinions.
feedback, yeah, on their whole beautiful weekend. And I think that's really bold and something I'd love to see in the mainstream more.
Sure.
And that openness to change and that inclusive nature is sick, man.
Openness to opinions, openness to views and everything. And yeah, I 100% agree with everything Ollie has just said, and just want to thank you guys, the artists, for giving your time to creating these pieces and being so vulnerable with your art to share it to the world, because as artists, we understand that fear, the borderline trauma that comes along with sharing your art pieces. And yeah, we just want to say a massive thank you to every single one of you guys that was involved in this.
Awesome. I think that's us, right?
Yes, that is.